Hello, everyone. Welcome to our latest gathering of the American Mussar community. This week, we are going to be studying the soul trait of Yirah, which is kind of a complicated one, and we'll get more into that after our opening meditation. So I invite you to relax and close your eyes. And please take in a deep breath through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold, and inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And as you go at your own pace of inhaling through the nose and holding, and exhaling through the mouth and holding. If thoughts should come into your brain, just observe them and let them pass, like watching a car move past on the road. Now is not the time for solving problems. It's not the time for planning. All you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema, listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Hello, Nico and Shelley, Martin, and Aileen. Well, here we are. This is our second to last meeting of our ninth Mussar cycle. And I'll start with just a quick reminder of the schedule. So today, next week, we'll be exploring Yirah. Then we'll take a break for the summer. And there'll be a high holiday or an Elul workshop, maybe on Psalm 27, maybe a Teshuvah workshop. I haven't decided yet. And then we will begin Mussar cycle number 10, if you can believe it. And that
Wow.
will be likely in October, after the high holidays and after my daughter's wedding, which will be
Oh,
Oh,
September
congratulations.
26th. Yay, woohoo!
Mazel tov.
Mazel tov.
Thank you. Hi, Bonnie. Welcome. So we'll start today just with a little recap on equanimity. I know it was tough for all of us with the Knicks winning to hold our equanimity, but I am curious how it showed up. And someone wrote back to me and talked about screaming at the TV, and yeah, so there we have it. So how about for you? Where did equanimity show up? Or if you weren't here, you could just do a general check-in with Mussar, what may have shown up in your life related to your Mussar practice. Who would like to begin? Yes, Bonnie.
so I'll start. Two experiences. One was don't drop your metal water bottle on your foot after you've worked out and you don't have a shoe on. I broke a toe in two places.
Oh
So
no.
equanimity is there are certain things I can't do. I can't do aerobics any longer for 4 to 6 weeks. I can't do X, Y, and Z. So I've had to rebalance. I can lay, I'm trying it tomorrow. I can go to the athletic facility, lay down on the bench and do weights, but I can't even do treadmill.
Mm,
So I've had to balance, and it's hard for me. The other piece, which I think is um, more interesting for me, is that I have two older grandchildren who both have issues, and I have a daughter and a former son-in-law and his wife. And so they called me on Sunday and about our two mutual their children, my grandchildren, and I listened and I practiced what I have on a post-it that I really should write on the inside of my hand, which is, are you asking me for my ideas or opinion, or do you simply want me to listen? And stepmom said, wow, you're really practicing that. And I said, yes, what do you want? And she said, I want your advice.
mm,
So that all came out of a book that Harry, who I haven't seen in a long time, called Walking on Eggshells, Dealing with Your Adult Kids.
mm,
So it really was a good test for me to
mhm.
shut my mouth, listen, and find out what they wanted.
Yeah. Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you for sharing that. That is so hard to do. And I've heard, you've shared other stories with that practice. And over time, it's, started with 3 days later, I wished I had done that. And then it was the next day, I wished I had done that. And then halfway through me giving advice, I stopped and asked. And now it's moved up to, before you have talked. So it's really the way, Mussar works with these gradual changes when we stay with it. And we might get it not perfect 1,000 times before we're more or less kind of in a routine. So thank you so much for sharing that journey with us. Who else would like to check in? Yes, Steph.
I have a friend who we talk almost every day on the phone, and we're in a study together. But in fact, she's the one who got me into Musar.
Hmm.
She likes to call me and talk about things that bother her, and I don't mind hearing it the first time, but she gets quite upset. And after hearing about the same problem 3 or 4 times, and I tend to get sucked into her feelings
Hmm.
because I want to sympathize with her, but at the same time, um, it's not my problem. And really, all she wants is sympathy. And so this week, she had a very difficult family problem where one of her nephews on her husband's side is anti Semitic and left some very cruel comments on Facebook.
Oh,
And, um, and then he had wanted to come visit them. And she was ambivalent about that, but she still welcomed him to their home, invited him to come, but he never returned her message. And I can understand her being upset about that, but um, I didn't want to hear about it the third time. And I know that rehearsing wrongs that have been done to us tends to just dig that memory groove in deeper so that we remember it more. And if you just forgive them and let it go, then you won't remember it as much, and you'll be able to forget it and get over it sooner. But she was getting to my equanimity, and I kind of held on and said, okay, reminding myself I'm listening to her and being sympathetic, but I'm reminding myself that this is her problem. And, and I've shared with her about not repeating the, the wrongs done to make it easier to forget. But so she knows that. She doesn't need to be reminded. Just listen and be sympathetic and remind myself that I don't have family problems
Hmm.
at the moment. At least, okay, well, I do, but they're kind of tamped down for the moment. And this is her problem and not mine.
Yeah. Thank
I,
you.
I, I don't know if that's really equanimity or just,
Well, equanimity, I mean, certainly piece of it is patience, where it's just like, I'm going to stay in this uncomfortable situation, until it passes. Equanimity, it's about your internal state. It was like, how reactive did you get? And sometimes practicing patience helps us keep our equanimity. Because if you weren't practicing patience, you may have gotten, when you're talking about, I don't want to get attached to her emotions. I don't want to jump on the train and go for a ride. I just want to watch the train and be sympathetic. And so that piece is equanimity, but I think it was practicing patience to maintain equanimity. That's what I was hearing. Does that feel like your experience?
yes, as I was sympathizing with her, it was very easy for me to get caught up in her emotions. And so I kind of had to back off and just, like you say, watch the train go by.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sure. Not easy. Not easy. Toby, did I see your hand before? Or were you just scratching the cat?
No, I was going to address the screaming at the TV thing. Um, I am not a sports fan. However, I just started watching Law and Order again.
Oh,
They have, yeah, they have new episodes, and I found myself. I mean, okay, they're going to go from murder to a jury decision in 1 hour. Okay, well, that doesn't happen. And normally that stuff doesn't bother me, but for whatever, the courtroom scenes just, I started screaming at the TV. No, no, object, please. It's like, what are you expecting to accomplish by that? And
hmm.
now I remember why I no longer watch Law and Order. So I'm afraid equanimity has left me. Just,
Yes. Well, sometimes, we need to change our behavior by avoiding a situation, and if you want to practice equanimity, can you last 5 minutes of a courtroom scene or 30 seconds with Law and Order?
I'll have to try that. I'll have to try because I'm not doing so well at this point. So anyway.
Set a little timer, put it in front of you, and just sit and breathe. So I've watched a lot of Law and Order in my day. So I'm to the point where I used to get teased by my wife about how much, other Mussar check-ins, TV confessions. All right, well, let us dig in then. Okay, so may I have someone unmute and read these bullets, please?
Yirah does not translate directly to English. It can be either fear or awe. Yirah of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Proverbs 9:10. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Awe of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. So what I'm putting in kind of juxtaposition is in English, we have to pick one or two. In Hebrew, it's probably some combination of both together, some overwhelm, some trembling, perhaps. Um, it's something that we can feel in other circumstances, something greater than ourselves. But I'm curious, what speaks to you here, or do you have a reaction of the different translations of Yirah in the same verse from Proverbs? I'm going to stop the share. Martin and then Susan.
There's fear, there's awe of the Lord, fear of the Lord. Does the Hebrew text talk about love of the Lord?
There is, but that's a different word.
Oh, okay.
That's not Yirah.
Okay, yeah.
There is, but it's like Ve'ahavta, you shall love the Lord your God.
Okay.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha. The Ve'ahavta right after the Shema. So ahav is love.
Okay, yeah. So if we fear the Lord or love the Lord, can those happen at the same time? That's my question. Okay.
What do you think?
Let's see, love or fear? Hmm. Both are so powerful. I don't know if I can do that simultaneously. I might have to choose one. I mean, that's my thought. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Martin.
Known caller.
Yeah. Were you going to comment on that, Pete, or should I?
Yeah, yeah, I
Okay.
was.
Then we'll go to Susan, but let Pete comment on Martin's question.
I think of fear as encompassing or Yirah, in that a lightning storm. The lightning storm can be terribly frightening, and at the same time, you can be in awe of it.
Hmm. Thank you, Pete. Susan.
I think Pete pretty much said what I was going to say because when you were reading those definitions, I suddenly had this fantasy of standing at Sinai, the smoke and the fire and the voice of God. And it's like,
Yes.
I'd be terrified, but I would also be completely awestruck.
A great example. Aileen.
I guess I just wanted to say I have a hard time fearing God,
Hmm.
and I've had a hard time with this one. I understand awe, um, but it's not in me right now to fear God.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wendy.
Just had an experience today with awe because today is our son's birthday and he's 41. And I was just in awe that he's still here, that
Hmm.
it's like having been regifted this son, because when his brother died, he didn't do well. So we thought we were going to lose him too. So we were very fearful. And I think I become fearful when I don't have any control, but it's not a fear of God, it's a fear standing next to the divine. And then when something happens like this, the awe is just there. It kind of comes from the fear, comes out from the fear, if you will. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but we're happy to have him.
Well, happy birthday to your son. Today happens to be my mother's birthday as well. So she would have been 82 today. So, and it's a reminder, it's also one of my best friend's birthdays. So I should text him after this call.
18 is the best.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
618. 6 times 3 is 18. So I could go on with math tricks. But let's talk about the second half of that sentence. The beginning of wisdom. Whatever Yirah is, however you want to think about it, is that the beginning of wisdom? Is awe or fear of the divine the beginning of wisdom?
Rabbi, can you put that in the chat?
Yeah,
And then I'm going to say something.
I'm just going to put the whole text.
Thank you.
There we go. Beth.
I think that we need to be in awe of God to be ready to worship Him. We need to recognize how much greater He is. We are small and He is God. And because He's the perfect judge, we also need to fear Him. I think perhaps we judge ourselves more harshly than He will. He will discipline us, but He will not punish us in anger. He will try to reform our behavior, I think. But both of those kind of complement that we need, that we can only begin to be wise when we recognize that there is a power greater than we are.
Thank you, Beth. Nico.
Hi everyone. Um, I often replace the word God by the universe at your suggestion.
Hmm?
And it's one of the rare instances where it doesn't really work because of the fear part. Until I try to put myself in a mind frame of the something greater than yourself, that sort of puts you in a humble position. And that's where the link to me is made between the two parts of the sentence, because I think humility is at least a good first step on the path of wisdom.
Yeah.
Accepting your place and accepting that you have so much to learn, etc. Which is not something easy for me. Hence my presence here too, and sometimes my reluctance to speak. But yeah, that's the link I made between the two parts of the problem.
Yeah. Thank you, Nico. And I would imagine there are some people who might say, yeah, well, the universe is a dangerous place and you can catch these diseases and you go into the jungle and you catch some mosquito disease. And, so there's,
I understand, but I mean, fear of God is not something especially negative. It's something that most people who believe in God would say is natural. Whereas fear of the universe makes you just want to stay shut in and is, akin to being too scared.
yeah,
So that's where the dichotomy was.
it
But
is.
I completely understand. I agree that you can say, "Oh, the universe is a big scary place," and staring into the void, etc. But the feeling of all plus fear is something I would equate to vertigo,
Uh-huh.
like looking into a very big expanse, like from a plane or a canyon, and looking down. You're both
Mhm.
feel an attraction and a fear and a deep respect, and again that sense of being so small and that
Yeah,
a sense of humility.
yeah. And there's a certain wisdom in that too, saying, I'm just a small person and, I need to treat the edge of the canyon with respect. Um, we will get a little bit more into the fear side of Yirah next week when we talk about like the fear of consequences. It's like you need to realize that if you decide you're going to tap dance at the edge of the cliff, it might give way and you could fall. And so we have Bonnie and Shelley and Susan and then Pete.
So I believe it was Abraham Joshua Heschel who talked about being in partnership with the divine. And I have had a relationship with God, and she and I have major discussions all the time. Um, and so this is going to be very personal. I am very, very high risk with breast cancer. I have it on both sides of my family. And 2 years ago, it was breast cancer, the sequel. And I panicked, even though I have been on this very tight protocol for 25 years and 1 month. I thought I was out of the woods and I was very fearful. And then I realized I have done everything I can do. I don't ever miss appointments. I have a fabulous team of women physicians, and I'm going to get through this. And so there was the fear, and there was the um, love and the awe, and there was the partnership.
Mhm.
And so I'm on in I was in both of those at the same time. And I'm fine. And I will be fine. Um, but it wasn't something I had never expected to have it at the same time.
Yeah. Well, we're
Thank
so glad you're fine, Bonnie, and very scary for sure. I will also say for the record that there's another soul trait, which is pachad, which is fear, which is the kind of, and it gets very gray, what are you talking about? Fear of the divine, and I don't usually talk about like fear as pachad because I think it can get a little splitting hairy sometimes, because any soul trait, we've talked so much about the overlap between soul traits, and any sort of distinction, is it this one or that one, isn't all that helpful because they're just, it's a human way of trying to understand the soul in bits and pieces. So anyway, Shelley.
So I think what everybody said was just brilliant. Um, and and I think from my perspective, the issue that we tend to have is the word fear, because what does fear mean to us, right? Are we afraid of the spider? When it's crawling up your leg, all that kind of stuff. And I think, and when you think of the awe of God, yeah, that's uh, it's there, right? You feel it, right? And so for me, I always take words like that and I go into the emotion that it's creating with me. And and yeah, to be in the presence of the divine, of the universe, of God, there is that moment where your body has that little tingling sensation because it is so astonishing.
Mm.
And then at that same time, you're like, because I think when we have that little moment of fear, it's when we're actually judging ourselves because we're going, this is God. God knows everything about me. And now I actually have to be my truth. And I think that's where the fear actually comes from, for at least if I was going to say, for anybody, for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. Yeah, and so I'm connecting what you're saying to this, beginning of wisdom. It's sort of like I could lie to myself, but I can't lie to the divine. So I might as well be honest with myself. It's kind of, you know, I don't know if that makes any sense, but Susan.
Thank you. I was glad, Nico, that you brought up the universe because although I believe in God, God in my day-to-day life, God can feel quite remote. But when I have experiences of awe, they're more likely to be about nature. And it does feel like Yirah because I mean there are those fabulous moments just looking out the window and looking at a sunset or taking a walk, whatever. But then my son is on his way here from Boston. I'm in New York area, and he's driving down from Boston. And he called me from a rest stop saying he had to pull over for 30 minutes because there's a tornado watch. And so, right, right. So nature, I mean, to think about the power of a tornado, but also the fear, like don't get in your car and drive along if there's a tornado coming your way. And I feel that, sometimes we've had tornado watches where I am every rare times, but there are those moments where there's a huge thunder and lightning storm, as you were saying, and I'm loving it. And I'm also thinking, oh my God, I'm alone here. I better not be sitting right next to a window. Yeah. So there's that mixture of, isn't this phenomenal? And oh gosh, this is so scary. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Susan. Hi, Harry. Good to see you. Um,
Sorry I'm a little late.
we're always happy when you can join us for whenever you can. So let's see, Pete, you're up next.
Okay. I have a question. Why shouldn't we fear God? if you throughout the Torah, there's instances of things that God does that are terrible, like burning Aaron's sons in front of him. I mean, it's every evidence that one should fear God.
Um, well, there's definitely a lot in the Torah, and there's a whole reward and punishment philosophy, which is, I mean, there are many aspects of God in different parts of the Torah. And some of them do some pretty harsh and things. Um, so, I think there's certainly a lot of the classic Mussar literature, which really gets into you got to worry about the fear of punishment, and God knows what you were doing. And if you don't follow the commandments, you're going to pay for it in the world to come, and you're not going to get to the world to come. But I guess, is that a rhetorical question, or is that kind of part of your personal theology that God does terrible things to people
It
sometimes?
was a personal question,
Mhm.
not part of my philosophy necessarily. It's just, you study the Torah and that's what you get out of it. God can be pretty terrible.
God can do those things. There is also an equal or greater number of, well, not in the Torah per se, but there's also a lot of chesed from God. It's not a one, it's not a one, we need to be careful not to fall into the Christian characterization of God as the Jewish God is only angry and only vengeful, because that's not the full story in the Torah.
Right.
I see Michael is up next.
So what I'm wrestling with in this moment is separating out relationship with my higher power and the question of where does wisdom begin for me? And I'm not sure that they're the same thing. And since the question before me is, does fear of God or awe of God, is that the beginning of my wisdom? Maybe I haven't given it enough thought to answer that for certain for myself. I'd have to think quite a bit more on that to know for sure. But I'm willing to grant that that's possible. That perhaps fear of God and awe of the universe and God, however I conceptualize that, is is a beginning of wisdom. Though I'm not entirely sure I would in this moment that it would be the only beginning of wisdom. Though that might be true, and I might not understand that yet. But neither of those things, certainly not fear and maybe not even awe, are characteristics of my relationship with the divine, because either puts my higher power far too far away from me, and that version of a higher power is not one that I need. What I need is a higher power that is forgiving, accepting, non-judgmental.
Mm.
For that relationship to make sense and work for me, and this is just personal,
Yeah.
I can't fear. I don't want to be in a relationship with anyone who I fear, human or divine. That's not a healthy, loving, that's not my definition of a healthy, loving relationship. So I'm trying to keep those two things separate because I think that that might help me see some moments where I need to invoke fear and awe more than I do. I tend to be very tentative around this soul trait.
Mhm.
And so maybe if I can separate those two things, I will be less so. So thank you for letting me sort of just spin that out.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I mean, this is a challenging one, and some Mussar teachers don't touch it, and I'm like, let's wrestle with it. Let's see if the wrestling can give us some insights, can give us help us learn something about ourselves, or maybe bring in a different way of looking at things. Beth, and then I think, and then we'll go back to Pete, and then it might be useful, given Michael's comments, to look at the spectrum of Yirah a little bit.
Um, as to what Michael said, I think we've all been in a loving relationship with someone that we fear because that's the kind of relationship that most of us have with our fathers, uh, and sometimes our mothers. I mean, they love us, but they're also going to discipline us when we mess up. And we need some judgment so that we learn justice. God is greater than we are, so he is the authority figure. So, yes, there is fear, but there is also love, and he disciplines us in love, I think. But, you know, I don't want to say what you should believe. I'm just responding.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your theology and how that works for you, Beth. And then Pete, I think I saw your hand as well.
Yeah. Yep. As we talk about God, I think in terms of God's being transcendent, unknowable, and at the same time immanent, always there. And I think when I'm looking for evidence of God, I think one of the places I look is awe. Awe is something you experience, but you can't really put it to intellectual scrutiny. And when talk about fear, it seems that we're talking about things that are more concrete and knowable rather than what God is, which is uh, transcendent. Does it make sense?
Yeah, and as much as any of this does, but yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a really interesting, when we're talking about these things about theology, about awe, about like our relationships to things bigger than ourselves, there's a certain level where it goes beyond the intellect, which is why I say as much as anything does, because there's a certain level where it's just in the feelings and the other sort of parts of our humanity that are hard to intellectualize or can't be intellectualized, if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
So let's take a look at the spectrum and see if this maybe gives us some more insights. Okay, so the as you probably know, I split Yirah into two different chapters. So the awe chapter, the mantra I wrote is I play a small part in something greater than myself. And if we have too little Yirah awe, we become very self-centered. We become we become the divinity, very kind of related a little bit to, this connected to humility, which somebody talked about. But if we have too much awe, we can just become disconnected from the world. And the Baal Shem Tov said that, awe is in front of us all the time, but we put our small hands in front of our eyes and we don't see it, which I find very moving and uplifting. But if everything is just so awe-inspiring, you're just not, you know, you can just lose touch with the world. So I'm going to stop the share here, or maybe I'll leave it up and I won't be able to see all of you at once. But does anyone have any comments on this? Or does this give you any maybe additional insights or just objections to this whole concept from seeing it? Yes, Wendy.
Well, when you put it up, I saw too little, and I was thinking fear ensues, and too much, you ignore fear. So either too much or too little puts you into some kind of danger. And I'm talking about danger as like a broad, not just like you get physically injured or something. But yeah, that's what I saw. Too little, and I'd be fearful. And then too much, and I wouldn't see the fear I needed to see.
Mm, thank you, Wendy. So often when we're out of balance for a soul trait, we'll actually sometimes display behaviors from both extremes. And I never thought about that in the Yirah context before. You could almost imagine someone being very self-righteously self-centered about their, connection to something greater. Um, and certainly I totally hear what you're saying, Wendy, but you don't want to be at the extremes because you can get negative outcomes from both. Anyone else have a thought about this? All right, well, we will start. I want to share something. Uh, Someone want to just unmute and read this first bullet? This is from a friend of mine from rabbinical school, and this was from their thesis. And I think it's a very interesting. They're a surfer, and someone want to read this, please?
I will.
Thank
One
you.
way we can experience God is through the lens of Yirah, as it holds both the meaning of fear and awe of a divine experience. There is one thing surfers know, it is this. Surfers move between divine reverence for the ocean and have real fear of it for good reason. You want me to keep going or just that one?
No, I just think just that one. So according to Rabbi Chell, how does Yirah kind of relate to the ocean and the surfer's experience? Wendy.
Well, that's what I was talking about, you know, putting yourself into danger by not having that balance. And
Yeah,
that surfing is a really good comparison because that's true.
yeah. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to something that I wrote. Um, I think in the chapter I talked a lot about having awe of the divine is kind of gives us something maybe to live up to. Um, so I wrote, if you have no doubt that if you live a life making your best efforts to live up to Jewish values, you will have a better life than if you ignore them. Each day we are faced with choice points where we have an opportunity to take the path of least resistance or to take the higher road. And so with your partner or partners, maybe write a mantra or prayer to help you use awe to take the higher road. So a little bit of an experiment, probably not the kind of way that many of us think about the universe or life or the divine. And this may be a little outside your comfort zone, or you might think this is like the coolest thing in the world. But I appreciate you all kind of making a good effort. Let's see. Okay. So the rooms. Oh, you want me to put it in the chat? Okay. Hang on. Okay. So again, if we have choice points, which give us an opportunity to take the higher road as opposed to the path of least resistance. So how might Yirah, awe of the divine, kind of help us take that higher road and not just the path of least resistance? Can it help us remain conscious for the choices that we have? So I look forward to seeing what you come up with. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Well, we don't have a ton of time, but we could probably hear from one or two people if they have a mantra they would like to share. Wendy.
Here it is, guys. Here's ours. Understand the fear and go forward in awe. And go forward in awe. So it's understand the fear and go forward in awe.
Thank you so much. I love it. Nico.
Took us a while.
Nico.
Hi. We spoke of many things, and one thing that stuck was that we create our own life as we go through it and experience it. And we went also to quantum physics and how the universe uses consciousness as a way to experience itself, all of that. Boiling it down to a mantra, borrowing it from a 90s movie would be the simple choose life, because you're living that experience in awe or fear, but you're choosing it at every step of the way.
Love it. Thank you, Nico. All right, well, my friends. Well, let's close our eyes and just focus on the light shining through our eyelids. This is the light of our divine spark, that piece of internal goodness that can never be taken away, never be separated from who we are. Let's take a moment of gratitude for that warmth and love and companionship from our divine spark and also from this community, all those who have shared this hour with us today and many other days on our journey. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes.